Abraham has been waiting for the fulfillment of the promise to receive his son, Isaac, whose name means laughter. You recall that first, Sarah and also Abraham laughed out of disbelief. It could be laughter also of irony, of a sense of, yes, that's a good joke. We old people are supposed to bear a child. It doesn't happen. I mean, it's a wishful thinking, but it's not rooted in reality. So they thought. So when the three travelers, the angels, were passing through a town and under the oak of Mamre, we heard that when the three angels promised that next year Sarah would bear a child, she was standing at the entrance of the tent on the other side. She laughed. And the angel said, "Why did she laugh?" She replied, "I didn't." Kind of playing a little trick here. No, you did laugh. Next year you will huddle, you will be carrying a child. Sure enough, this laughter out of joy, I would like even to imagine Abraham laughing out of joy, couldn't contain his happiness of seeing in his hands, in a very concrete, materialized way, the fulfillment of all the promise that he has been waiting for all these years. And it looks like now the family is going to live happily ever after. And instead, God put Abraham to the test. And our image of God can be distorted at this stage, and many people would say, how this good God, who first had promised a child to Abraham, now would put Abraham to the test, asking him to sacrifice his son Isaac, the one Abraham had been waiting all these years. It just doesn't make sense. Why, at this moment of so much happiness for Abraham, God would be asking, "Give him back to me"? There are a lot of layers of interpretation of this text. I would like to touch on some points. Our human heart is so treacherous and contorted that we can make an idol out of absolutely anyone or anything. That will become for us the most important reality in our existence. And we remember the Lord said, "You shall not have other gods apart from me. I am God, the only God. The other person is not God. Another thing is not God." And this idol is basically what we human beings create out of anything, asking that this item or a person would bring me fulfillment of my longing for happiness. Will make me happy. No matter how or what, as long as I can fill up the interior void which is in me. And at that stage, Abraham started attaching his heart to his son so much that Isaac started covering up God for Abraham. For many people, their children, their grandchildren, someone else becomes literally an idol, God. But this will become a trap for us. This will become a downfall. Let me give you some examples. If a parent eventually asking for a blessing and receives a child, all one's own aspirations and longings are being transferred over to a child who must fulfill the parents' dreams. There is a lot of anxieties, overprotection, manipulation. The relationship is toxic. It's not free. I've seen firsthand on few occasions what it means when a child becomes an idol for his or her parents. It's really toxic, to the point that the child becomes very rebellious, is getting suffocated, can't stand their parents, becomes angry, pushes them out, escapes from the house, because cannot fulfill the dreams of their parents' ideals. I even witnessed a suicide attempt of a child who just couldn't cope with his parents' demands on that child. The Jews were very smart. And also one of the 613 laws that the Jews received was that you must sacrifice your firstborn to the Lord, offer him up, saying, Lord, he is yours. I give him back to you. I want you to show what plan you have for my son. If not, you will break his neck. At first, people were saying that you would need to break physically a neck of your child. But it's not so. What it says is that if you don't offer him up to the Lord, and in this case, every child offering to the Lord, giving to him, placing in his hands, ultimately you will break that kid's life. You're not going to be free. You will be manipulating, you will be obsessed with this child, and the other way around can be very difficult, completely impeding him or her to find the vocation that God has for this child. We easily can confuse the gift with the giver. Unfortunately, yes, God, give me what I want. I don't know, a better job or a fiancé or a person. And again, I've seen when a boyfriend or a girlfriend or another person in one's own life becomes an idol, it's always leading to a toxic, destructive, even sometimes abusive and devastating relationship, because God is not at the center, and only God is the source of life and of happiness. If He's at the center, then everything else is evolving properly. So two people are putting God, His word, His guidance, His will at the very central part. If not, if people make out of themselves the center of attention, it's going to be disaster. God would like to free us, not to be paralyzed by toxic relationships. We can't imagine how destructive it is if we make out of another person an idol. God, who loves us, who is in control of this situation, who did not want Isaac to get slaughtered on Mount Moriah. Not at all. He wanted to free Abraham and also to free Isaac from this toxic bond that was getting corroded there. Sometimes I hear the most important thing in life is family. As long as family is present there, everything would go smooth. I would like to see that happening. If God is not at the center of this family, those that I have seen have plenty of contorted relationships, manipulations, issues there, because they are listening to each other instead of listening to God and being free. That's a key word to understand. God came to set us free instead of us being entangled, enslaved, being stuck in places that don't make us happy nor the other people happy. Now, Abraham is tested. He needs to detach. He needs to grow free. Only that way it will allow us to breathe in a new way. Sure enough, at the last moment, God intervened. The rabbis, at least some of them, say that even Abraham misunderstood God in terms of putting the knife through Isaac's throat. They said, look, you were meant to climb up there saying, God, he is yours now. Do in his life whatever pleases you. Regardless of how we would like to take the story, God makes himself known. Now he sees, look, now your relationship is getting healthy. I remember concretely a story of one mother who needed to bring her daughter to the Lord in a spiritual way, saying, I've been all enwrapped and anxious trying to figure her life and solve her problems. I can't do anymore. Guided by a wise and spiritually insightful confessor, she made this gesture of offering her up to the Lord. From that point on, when she took a step back, letting God be God for her and for her daughter, everything started taking a better course. Not by chance, right after, we hear that the Lord speaks to Abraham. I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you acted as you did in not withholding from me your beloved son, I will bless you abundantly and make your descendants as countless as the stars of the sky and the sands of the seashore. It shows that when we give our the most important items and even people to the Lord, giving them up, that, let's not forget, are on the first place God's gifts to us. But if we bring them to the Lord, he turns everything for a greater good, for our happiness, and the blessings are flowing. Instead, if we attach ourselves to God's gifts, sooner or later they will stink and they will turn to be a trap for us, for our salvation, for our path of happiness. And God, once he's pushed back, the blessings stop flowing. Let us ask the Lord for this free and generous heart, knowing that God doesn't want to hurt us, doesn't want to destroy us. The contrary, he would like to free us, make our hearts able to love him with our totality, placing him as the most important in our lives.